And good morning to all of you. We are about to start another session of the Environmental History Today webinars of the European Society for Environmental History. My name is Nina Vieira. I am the regional representative for Portugal, and together with Anna Olenenko and Katie Lindstrom, we have been organizing these seminars for the period between 2023 and 2025. These seminars take place every month, and this new series aims to connect the 22 regions that compose this society and to showcase the work that is being developed in each one of them. Today, we will welcome colleagues from Portugal, and our agenda is to learn more about the Portuguese network of environmental history, Reporta, that will be presented by our colleague Sara Pinto, and to be aware of the new topics of research that is being developed by PhD students within the scope of environmental history and environmental humanities. Due to unforeseen circumstances, our colleagues Paulo Vasconcelos and Manuel Fernandes are unable to attend this session, but Sara Pinto will give a short presentation on Paulo's work about eucalyptus. After that, at the final, we will gather on a virtual roundtable to discuss the challenges that these PhD candidates have been facing and the major contributions that they expect from their research. So, with no further delay, I would call Sara to present us about Reporta. And thank you all so much for attending this morning. Sara, when you want.
Hi, thank you, Nina. You can see my presentation? Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. I'll try to be very brief. I know that you are all excited to hear about those PhD researchers and students presenting their own works. That's what it's going to be so fresh about environmental history in Portugal. But I could not pass this opportunity, and thanks to European Society and Nina and her. Yes?
Let's go ahead, Sara.
Okay. And her colleagues, because so generously offer us this space that we can all meet and share our research. I think it's really, really important and keeps things in this networking function and yes, and dynamic. So thank you so much. So in Portugal, we also have a platform for all us to meet, to share, to know what people are doing, and also to sometimes to showcase our work. And that platform is our website. And that's what you can see. And the name is Reporta. And as the name says, it reports. And Reporta is reporting now for that's my slides. Why not? Oh, okay. So I was saying that Reporta is reporting since 2015. So next year we'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary. You can meet us in the website. It's one of the platform. Then I'll show another ways to find us. And you can see about Reporta. It's developed through the early collaborative networking of 4 art research and development institutes and universities. So it's an informal network, a collaborative one. And of course, we depend of all the information that our researchers are sending and sharing with us. You can always check on the event. So you can see that, for example, first event, it's our webinar today. So everyone can see it. And we are already announcing the 4th World Congress of Environmental History. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter and get to knowledge all what we are doing and all this call of papers and news. So this is the group of our researchers. We already have 188 researchers. At our website, you can see their names, institution. Thank you, Nina. I'm using your own personal presentation. So, yeah. So we can see Nina. She's in the sea, of course. Her email, institution, research unity, scientific area, and also her interest. So if you want to see who is in Reporta, what's doing, you can also do these search researchers, and you can connect and present yourself, and yes, get in touch. So everyone is welcome. I must say this is the Portuguese network for environmental history, but we have people worldwide. We have people from Brazil, Spain, from also North and South America. And of course, everyone is welcome. And not only about history, of course, our focus and we have a lot of people from history, but we also have people from geography, anthropology, sociology, political science, literature. So this is a very strong interdisciplinary network, and it is very important for us to keep that way because we only understand environmental history with all of these collaborations for other disciplines. So we have a broad understanding of environmental, of course. So you can always join Report. I hope you do. And then another important point for us is to share papers, to share publications. You can also, there are a lot of these publications are in English, so very welcome to search and to read. We have journal articles, also full books, and PhD and master theses and dissertations. So yes, you can see what people are writing. And of course, you are free to share with us your own works and to disclose them. I think it's a very important platform. As you saw, we have people worldwide. So yes, it is interesting to share that. Another point we enjoy a lot, it's our environmental stories, our histories. And we must say it was very inspired from what Environmental Society presented and also tried to do. These are short stories that everyone can, it does not mean that necessary to a formal publication or a formal journal article. No, these are short stories. You see about 600 words with an image. So the idea is to do a comment, to present. Maybe you have an idea that you want to share, or you found some documental source that's new, or you want to think about it, and then you share. All of these texts are in Portuguese and in English. So please free to see our histories and environmental stories, not only to read, but to share. We welcome you to present your own work. And so it's a short notice. So yes, it's more dynamic than just a full article or a full paper. And you can see already some of them, like Anna and Manuel are also the researchers that were also to present at this seminar. And of course, the most up-to-date information we can share, it's all about the news. call for papers for scientific events, seminars, roundtables, but also call for papers for publications. We are also receive this kind of news from our research centers that collaborate with us. And we are not only expecting that people go to our website to see these calls, because all these news are going to be being channeled to our newsletter, and all of you can subscribe, even if you don't want to join our research network. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. We already have 383 subscribers, and then our newsletter it's every month. So every month you receive an update about what's new, what people are doing, some calls of papers that you can submit. So yes, feel free to share and to subscribe. And I have also to present, thank you, Nina, the wonderful work of Nina in our Instagram. We also present on the Instagram. I think it's a very much more dynamic and direct way to communicate. And not only what we are doing, but also what we have done. So we have some pictures and some results from previous meetings and encounters. So thank you, Nina, for all your work. And of course, please connect to us in Instagram. Well, I must say that we are also very proud to say that we maintain from 10 years now a tradition of our meetings. So it's not only important for us to connect in the internet, in Instagram, in our website or newsletter, but also to physically meet and to physically gather. As I said, the first meeting was 10 years ago in Porto, and we tried to connect the topic of our meetings to address some of the work more up to date that is being done. So 10 years ago in Porto, we were concerned about crossing borders, connecting edges of environmental history. It was our first meeting, and we want to present what could be done. And we stressed a lot the way that could be done interdisciplinary, so that we could join people from all over the place and all over scientific backgrounds. Then 2 years later, we were in Lisbon for discuss environmental changes in historical perspective. And so, as you can see, we tried that 2 years and 2 years. It's another research center, another university that welcome us. In 2019, it was in Évora for dynamics and resilience. And then 2 years later, I must say that COVID didn't stop us. And we also meet online, but we meet. It was Coimbra then, welcome us. And naturally, as you can also understand, the theme was about health concerns, of course, and diseases. And yes, and last year, we all went to North and went to Minho. And we gather about the topic of energy and its social environmental challenges. So, yes, these meetings are very important. We also do our assembly, our researchers' assembly, to have new ideas, to think how can we promote more our research network. And I must say that I must conclude presenting and announcing that next year we'll be back to Porto to celebrate the 10 years. Yes, and at CITSEM, we are very happy to receive all of you. So to these counting multi-species and rereading environmental archives and methodologies to do like a situation points on what we are doing. I finished. Thank you so much for your attention. I welcome you to see what are we doing, not only in this seminar with these fantastic presentations from PhD students, but also to go to our website, to subscribe our newsletter, join us on the Instagram, and just to get together, to connect. We are very happy to welcome you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you so much for this. Sara is he's been doing the management of all of these that you saw, so thank you so much for that. And now I would call our PhD students. We will start with Isabel Lopes, then Sara will briefly present the work of Paulo, then Rebeca, Brígida, and Jaime at the final. When we thought about this session, we tried to have a good balance between land and sea, women and men. So that will not happen today, but that was our intention. We will have much more about sea than land. It's not my fault. So I hope you enjoy, and then we will have the roundtable at the end. So, Isabel, would you like to start? Thank you.
Are you seeing the presentation? I will start, and good morning, everyone. Today, I will talk about some of the results of my PhD project that I am working on about drift sands on the northwest coast of Portugal between the 16th and the 19th centuries. And despite being a local study, this project is framed within a regional, national, and European context, not only in the evolution of European institutional, political, legislative, and scientific history, but also in historical climatology, the environmental history, and disaster studies. I have observed no differences between the defense strategies against drift sands in northwest of Portugal and some areas of Atlantic Europe between the Middle Ages and the early modern age. Sorry. In terms of theoretical contextualization, I can mention these strategies with the concepts of subcultures of disaster, a term formulated by William Anderson in 1965 to define societies that have adapted to constant dangers with cultural patterns aimed at solving the problems arising from the awareness of a periodic disaster threat. Also, I can mention the term subcultures of coping by Greg Bankoff, applied societies on the English coast and in the Philippines that were molded by the interrelationship between the environment and the extreme natural phenomena and whose vulnerabilities promoted particular forms of resilience. And this idea also has been applied, for example, by Tim Soanes and Franz Mauelschagen, who have shown that historical North Sea societies located in particular risk area have had varying levels of preparedness against the danger of nature over time. Regarding to the comparative spaces with the Portuguese case here, we have examples of the actions carried out in France, in Belgium, in the Netherlands, in the Scandinavia, and also in the United Kingdom. I don't know if there are any other areas that could also be compared, since this analysis is limited by the availability of a bibliography that in languages that are more familiar to me. And in the past, communities have adopted simple and local strategies for adapting to coping with changes in the territory, starting from the most local level, the individual, the family, the neighbor, and the neighborhood and the parish. And collective action, it's the formal or informal cooperation and coordination, and ended up being more successful as opposed to large projects, usually ordered by the institutions that manage a larger territory, and significant interventions. Large projects do not usually not consistently achieve results, and sometimes ignore the local strategies to cope with disasters, and which are almost always central to a short and medium-term resolution. And throughout the Middle Ages and the early modern age, various European territories were affected by drift sands or sand invasions, sometimes also appear this term. And while in some places eventually succumbed and became inhabited, in other areas, even though arable land was lost and buildings and communication routes were often damaged, communities resisted. And for example, in these three pictures, it's the area that I'm working on. This parish disappeared in the 15th century and became uninhabited since that time. But these places were also inhabited in the 15th and in the 16th century, and only became inhabited in the last century. And collective action also has been fundamental in resolving the short and medium-term effects of drift sands, such as the sanding of arable land. And furthermore, this informal collective action often complements the measures adopted by local institutions. However, at other times, it is done without their permission, but the goal is always to mitigate and solve the effects of drift sands and guarantee the ecological balance of their territory. And concerning the strategies adopted in the northwest of Portugal, the most mentioned solution was to place obstacles against the wind and the small water courses that densely cover the territory of the northwest of Portugal and were responsible for transport sediments from the ocean to inland. There are thus numerous references to vegetable edges. There are also firmer structures, such as wooden fences represented here in this map and in this sketch, or with less representation in historical documentation because they were more expensive. There are references to stone walls. These structures were placed in the commons, but also used by private individuals to enclose their homes and yards. And these structures are mentioned in coastal dunes, but also in inland dunes along the European Aeolian sand belt that is from France to Russia. And it is also mentioned in the north of Europe, as you can see here in the coast of Norway. At other times, the parish asked individuals to dig ditches or gullies around arable land to prevent it from being sanded. And for example, here in Gascony, the ditches were used around the houses and military forts to prevent sand from accumulating. For example, here in the Havre port. There is also mention of the partial clearing of arable land promoted by some individuals, as you can see here in this documentation. There are also other cases in which sandy soil is mixed with sand with more minerals. However, it is not known how this task was carried out, and this activity has a shallow level of involvement, and the results obtained are very meager. And for example, again, in Gascony, the sand that accumulated around the chapel of Verdun was cleaned with ox carts or removed by hand. And for example, in the second half of the 19th century, in Portugal, women also removed by hand the sand accumulated around a church. The afforestation of coastal areas, it is also very mentioned in the documentation, and it is promoted by local and regional institutions and also by the central government throughout the 18th and the 19th centuries, and was also adopted by the people on their properties and in the commons. And the forest, in addition to the economic importance that wood resources had for institutions and communities, was also capable of fix the sandy soils. And it was planted pine trees and creeping plants such as the marram grass, heather or broom to create obstacles and fix the sandy soils. So over the time, the inhabitants tried to plant these species in their wastelands or common areas, either with the authorization of institutions that controlled the access of these areas and led to some tension relationship. It is often the topic of forestation in various parts of Europe, which makes possible to collect drift sand data, for example, in Portugal, in France, in Norway, United Kingdom, and many other places. In addition to these solutions, the memory worked as a strategy of resilience and was used to demonstrate that the communities could resist over the time. And memory has made it possible to remember and justify the times when certain parishes disappear, that I showed before, and to avoid it again in the new places where the community is settled. And also the memory was using specific actions that demonstrate that over the time certain localities could resist and not falling into ruin again. And for example, these descriptions of Colvin in Scotland that disappeared in 1694, it is, I guess, it is the most famous case in the world. And the descriptions are very similar to the Portuguese. And you can search in this website that is promoted by Robert Gordon University. In this website, you can read some personal memories, collective memories, and the historical facts that the university tried to search in this try to search in these descriptions what is a legend and what is the historical facts, and it is very interesting. And these descriptions are very similar to the Portuguese and of some parishes that disappear. For example, this parish disappeared in the 15th century, and this one disappeared twice. The first time was during the Roman Empire, and the second one was in the High Middle Ages. And in conclusion, taking into the account of the title, How Past Societies Cope with Drift Sands, it seems that throughout the chronology and in the northwest coast of Portugal, there was an effort of the part of some communities to resist to the instability of the territory. And the collective action in Portugal is similar to other Atlantic societies in the same chronology. They place obstacles, they promote deforestation, and they clean the sandy soil that accumulated on the arable land and in the urban space. And it is also possible to conclude that drift sands have no borders, and coastal communities endure the common challenge with similar impacts on its daily life, as it was applied simple tools and sometimes successful to cope with drift sands. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Anna. Let's now move to Paulo by Sara.
Okay. Okay, so this presentation is Paulo's presentation. He's a PhD student at University of Porto, and is developing a project named Forest, Economy and Society, the case of eucalyptus and the new environmental challenges, 19th to 20th century. So it began in 2022, and its focus on studying the forests from economic and social perspectives, particularly emphasizing the case of eucalyptus and the new environmental challenge from the mid-19th to the late 20th century. So he has identified the environmental impacts of eucalyptus as the core research focus and key issue of his work. Considering the characteristics of eucalyptus trees, they have contributed to several problems, particularly in ecosystems such as loss of biodiversity, landscape alteration, impacts on water resources, soil depletion, and other environmental categories and aspects. And it aims to address these environmental challenges and the ecological conflicts associated with using these three species. Another reason for his choice of topics stems from the perceived and evaluated increase in the percentage of lands occupied by forests, particularly eucalyptus forests. As a non-native tree species in the Portuguese forest, eucalyptus was introduced in mainland Portugal in the mid-19th century and has since been extensively cultivated for afforestation and reforestation purposes. E. globalus wood is predominantly used in pulp and paper production. Portugal is one of the main producers of pulp and the finished product, paper, exporting to over 160 countries, accounting for approximately 51% of forest product export, with almost 80% of sales absorbed by the European market. In this context, he aims to adopt a multidisciplinary approach, recognizing that human intervention is crucial alongside natural components in shaping forest spaces as products of interaction established over the past 200 to 250 years. Through a historical perspective that integrates territorial planning and forest management, it seeks to comprehensively understand the problems arising from territorial development, human intervention, and natural components. This planning action can be seen as applying all public policies, especially economic, social, and environmental ones, which are inherently linked to spatial objects and their enhancement. Territorial planning aims to organize space and enhance territories concerning the sometimes conflicting needs of economic development and territorial balance or cohesions. So, as evident, these aspects underscore the complex nature of public intervention, which consider the location of activities not as they are, but as they should be, after the intervention of various appropriate mechanisms. So, for these reasons, public policies are strongly influenced by the factor of time, preferably combining time with space. So it's essential to highlight some elements of what he has just stated, which may better clarify the object of study. So as we can see in these four maps presented, they depict land use and occupation in Portugal between 1910 and 2018. In the first three maps, with data from 1910, the 60s, and 2010, we can observe the expansion of forest areas represented in green, and in the last map, with data from 2018, depicted in dark green. The various stakeholders in the Portuguese forests, private owners, communities, and also the state, are all operating in coordination with differentiated objectives, have transformed the forest area between the last quarter of the 19th century and recent years, increasing from around 7% to the recent 36% of the area according to the National Forest Inventory, or 39% of the continental area according to the 1818 Land Use and Occupation Map. This increase in forest area did not occur linearly or continuously, but was characterized by advances and setbacks over time. Forests, including wooded areas and temporarily deforested lands, are the primary lands used in mainland Portugal. Eucalyptus trees were introduced to the regions of the Mediterranean and subtropics in the mid-19th century. With over 700 different species of eucalyptus worldwide, the one that will be addressed and used to deepen this research is Eucalyptus globalis labile, commonly known as blue gum eucalyptus, and that occupies approximately 26% of the total area. This species occurs naturally along the southern coast of mainland Australia into regions of Victoria. Other populations are also in the insular state of Tasmania, as well as west and east coasts. The introduction of this species in Portugal is believed to have occurred in 1854 as part of a broader movement stemming from the botanical curiosity of various plant enthusiasts. These individuals order seeds of exotic plants from foreign nurseries to adorn gardens and parks without government intervention or involvement of entities responsible for forestry. Following the initiative of private individuals, eucalyptus plantations almost simultaneously appear in national forests. Eucalypt trees began to play an important role in Portuguese forests after the 1880s, as they possess qualities that sought to address some afforestation concerns in a country lacking extensive forest area. The production of pulp for paper making from these trees significantly contributed to the increase in forest area, especially after the 60s of the 20th century, due to the high demands for raw materials by the pulp industry, making eucalyptus trees dominant in the Portuguese forest. So then Paulo presents some of their aims in this research project. And that is first to describe the historical configuration of the contemporary forest, focusing on eucalyptus and its environmental impacts. Second, to identify the reasons behind the choice of eucalyptus industrialization and the respective configuration of this option. Third, to identify the maybe contradictory relationship between industrial wealth and ecology. And fourth, to analyze and describe the social and conflictual impacts of eucalyptus cultivation. So I'm going to advance to some of his research hypotheses. Maybe that can interest them later. The starting questions may lead to various research hypotheses that seek to provide possible solutions for this resolution. To confirm that there was a paradigm shift with agrarian conversion of a significant part of the territory that could be seen as having great potential for afforestation. Scientific laboratory research on the adaptation of the species, including the scientific incorporation of eucalyptus into the forest industrial sector, to analyze the evolution of land ownership nature, to demonstrate the reasons behind the resurgence of this forest subsector and the natural advantage of the species, to make it evident that the choice of rapid afforestation based on eucalyptus, as well as the insatiable demand for raw materials by the pulp sector, and the reconfiguration of this forest subsector for rapid internationalization may have made the country depend on a sustainable monoculture regime, and finally, the fragility of local regional resistance. So I'm finishing. Thank you so much for the attention.
Thank you, Sara. Now, Rebecca, in the meantime, if anyone wish to make some question or want to write in the chat a comment or something, please feel free to do so when you want.
Hi, My name is Rebeca Baptista, and I'm going to present my thesis entitled Marine Ivory in Medieval Europe in the 10th-13th centuries, Hunting, Circulation, and the Use of Whale, Walrus, and narwhal raw materials. Like other scientific areas, art history and medieval studies has adapted to new paradigms and challenge, both societal and environmental, by opening up to other disciplinary branches. One of the main challenges the discipline has faced is undoubtedly the need to respond to the Sustainable Development Goals proposed by the United Nations. Among the other goals, the 14th stands out for protect marine life, conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources, which is the one that most concerns this research. However, the question that arises is what extent can art history and medieval studies contribute to the production of new knowledge about the impact of marine life in the historical past? It is in this sense of responding and adapting to the global goals that this research fits in. This research was born as part of my doctoral thesis for the e-learning doctoral program in medieval studies offered by Faculty of Social Science and Humanities of Universidade Nova in partnership with Universidade Aberta. Its main objective is to understand the cultural, artistic, and economic, geographical, and social impact of marine ivories in the main society, the trade and acquire them in the Europe from the 10th to the 13th centuries, with a special focus on the Iberian Peninsula. To achieve this main objective, we also propose the following specific objectives: to study the process of hunting and extraction ivory from marine animals such as walrus, whale, and narwhal, analyzing the geographical space they inhabit, including climatic conditions, which influence the material for artistic purposes. Reprise the marine ivory routes in the context of the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, to reconstruct the former, including the hypothesis of a marine ivory route passing through the Iberian Peninsula as a geostrategic point for its commercialization with North Africa. To compare and analyze of marine ivory, whether or not they are out of context, in order to understand how material arrived at the production center, who commissioned them, and for what purpose. Explain how these marine animals contribute to the construction of marvelous and mythological imaginary, and what the sources from the period under study tell us about this. For the outset, a transdisciplinary approach is essential. To this end, we believe it is essential to use a methodology of dialogue and cross-referencing between art history, medieval studies, and other scientific areas, such as environmental history. Bringing all these areas together allow us to raise issues related to the sustainability of hunting marine animals for the consumption of raw materials, always bearing in mind that the period study is Middle Ages, so we don't make value or moral judgments, just an analysis from historical scientific point of view. It is therefore necessary to define a preliminary corpus of primary sources, which will help us with the type of approach we intend to take. Material sources, pieces whose raw material comes from marine animals that we intend to analyze, taking into account our chronology, in order to understand not only the material itself, but also a first approximation to the production centers and the commissioner. Visual sources, seals, heraldry, illumination, tapestries, utilitarian and decorative objects, among others, that depict animals, marine animals, or the ivory that came from them. Written sources, bestiaries, sagas, travel accounts, charters, tax testimonies, which allow us to find out what extent and to what extent marine animals contribute to the construction of marvelous and mythological imaginary. making the ivory from them desirable, and which refer to the commercialization or taxation of this type of animals and the raw material from them. And also geographical sources, maps, topography, and toponymy, since this will allow us to get a sense of medieval geographical space, as well as the influence of these animals on it. I'd like to present a case of study just to clarify what we are doing here. So during the Middle Ages, whales were hunted off the coast of Iberian Peninsula. The first reference to whaling in the Spanish Basque Country came from the village of Motrico. In the end of the 12th century, King Alfonso VIII granted the privilege of the first whale killed by the men of Motrico to the Order of Santiago, which suggests that whaling took place before the village itself was formed. However, it was the same king who granted the Fuero de San Sebastián to Motrico in the beginning of the 13th century, which recognized the village as village with all its rights and duties. The importance of whaling in this town can also be seen in the town coat of arms, which show us, among other things, a whale between the waves. One of the objectives is scientific dissemination, where you can highlight two types of activities, one of a more academic nature, such as participation in conference, and the other one of a more informal nature, but with a significant social impact. One proposal of this type of dissemination is the creation of a website in English through the Google Sites with interactive content that aims to attract a diverse audience. This seeks not only to promote the results and the process of the research, but also incorporate interviews and current news related to the topic. For example, news about the current ivory traffic, a recurring theme in the international media. And also create an Instagram account to share occasional content related to the topic, as well as updates on the development of the research. In the future, this will complement the website, redirecting the public from the social network to the website. These scientific dissemination strategies not only make possible to repay society for investment made in the scientific production, but also raise awareness about the importance of preserving marine life, its sustainable use, and the eradication of illegal ivory trades. And thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Let's move now to Brígida.
Só partilhar.
Consegues?
Acho que é isto. Espera aí.
Tá.
Conseguem ver?
Sim, perfeitamente.
Good morning. First, thanks for invitation. I will present my thesis entitled The Socio-economic and Environmental History of Tuna Fisheries in Algarve, Relationships between Maritime Societies and the Sea in the 16th to 18th centuries. The Algarve, located in the south of Portugal, is a region characterized by an extensive coastline where, since ancient times, different societies have settled to take advantage of one of the great reach, the marine research. In case of tuna, this one of the great reaches of the region, at least since the Iron Age and until the 1970s, where fishing gears was used for a long time. The fish traps placed annually on high seas in front of Algarve coast had a political, economical, environmental, and social impact on this region, with trace left over time. This case, season displacement of large human masses to the coastline, where they built small village, arraiais, to support this fishing. The impact and beauty of this fishery was recorded not only in the historical documentation, but also in painting and literature. These fishing communities catch shoals of tuna using fishing traps during their biological migration between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea, and also after they return to the ocean. Principal goals to understand the evolution of the tuna fishing practices, knowledge and technological in the Algarve, a region characterized by a coastline that is distinct between a sandy leeward coast and low at altitude, with Ria Formosa separating the communities from the ocean, with the windward coast with geological cliffs and in direct contact with the Atlantic Ocean. These different territorial related at and still have consequence fishing communities live that settle and fishing here. Regarding the research, they are silent about the species, which is why we'll use the word tuna to refer to the different species within the tuna group. Tuna has been fishing in this region since at least the Iron Age, as archaeological indicate. Thus, by characterizing tuna fishing from a historical, social, economic, political, and environmental point of view, and by carrying out an individual analysis of these fishing communities, we aim to obtain a comparative study model and characterize this fishing in the region is more really way. In chronological terms, we will cover the period between the government of King Manuel I and King Joseph I, specifically, and until the earthquake of 1755. In the reign of King Manuel I onwards, there we significant political and social transformation, such as production of legislation related with the fisheries, which were confirmed and readjusted over the decade by different monarchs. In this way, we intend to achieve object through an integrated comparative approach and literature review, and also through a multidisciplinary vision for archaeological history, environmental history, geomorphological, ecological, and also anthropological. In this way, the goal is to characterize tuna fishing in the Algarve from the point of view of environmental history, understand the relations between human communities and the research, and who this community observe the territory, settle here, explore, and extract its marine research, and finally, how they transformed them. The aim of this work is to fill an existing gap on this subject for the early modern era, namely the knowledge and historical documentation collecting. Thus, three scientific questions we formulate to guide this project. One, for an ecological nature point of view, another from a social, economic, and cultural nature perspective, and the final one related with technological aspect. Objectives were created of each of them, and work tasks were defined with them. Thus, in the scientific question 1, what ecological factor influenced tuna fishing in the 16th to 18th century, and what were their consequences for local ecosystem and natural population? The aim is more specifically to understand the ecological cause and impact on natural system of the historical tuna fishing of the Algarve coast by analyzing patterns of abundance, catch, and trade, and the different fisheries inheriting to this fishery. In case of scientific question 2, what were the socio-economic factors and cultural context that influenced tuna fishing in the 60th to 80th centuries? What is the consequence for society at time? Thus, it's necessary to understand the social, economic, and cultural cases, as well as the social impact of historical tuna fishing in the Algarve coast through the analysis of economic data, rules relating with fisheries, and royal laws. Finally, scientific question 3, what were the technological adaptation of the fishery and what were the impact or change on the seascape of the Algarve coast? The aim is therefore to characterize the evolution of tuna traps in Algarve coast in technological terms in relation to knowledge about the marine environment and the seasonal occurrence of species and temporal variations, but also to contextualize the show's coast space through a geomorphological analysis of fishing territories and people relationships with the maritime environment, and they choice of territorial establishment. To do this, is necessary to analyze the rates and which traps appear and disappears, the technological evaluation of the traps themselves, and they support systems on coast, adapted to geomorphological and biological seasonal of research. This contemporary map shows the location of the frames for the period under study, based on the primary search consulted so far. The aim is to carry out an individualized and comparative analysis of this fishing community and to create, as already mentioned, a study model for this fishery. Results I hope, definition of operational concepts, technological, understand this type of fishing system, identify and mapping of sites, identification of characterization of the research, and creating a tuna fishing characterization model. Conclusions, but also my challenge. The documentation that was being worked on far shows that during the period under study, a lot of royal documentation was produced to regulate this activity, but it also understood that a large percentage has disappeared or has not yet been identified. In this document consulted so far, it has not been possible to identify with or not there as an environmental concept or a protectionist policies of this fishery, and the numbers of animals extracted are non-exist. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Brígida. Now,
So,
Jaime will be the last, but not least. Let's go.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, perfectly. Go ahead.
So, good morning. Before I start my presentation, I would like to thank Nina to invite us and allow us to present to a different audience our different research and doctoral projects. I would also secondly to ESEH for the development of this webinar that allows different people from different countries to present their research, thus establishing different bridges between the academic communities. So my name is Jaime. I'm a research assistant at SHAM and a PhD fellow student in the For Ocean projects, namely in the Lisbon team. My main areas of study are ancient history, history of religions, or study of religions, and environmental history. I consider that I dwell in the interdisciplinary framework of environmental humanities, with my research focus on symbolic values that emerge from the relationship that humans had with the compound water diachronically. So I started to develop my focus on this thematic with my ingression in the postgraduate studies, which culminated with my master thesis that would focus on the importance of the aquatic environment of Lower Mesopotamian to the aquatic conceptions of these ancient human populations. After this, and with the integration in the For Oceans project, the scope of my research became broader, and after conducting tasks of literature review, within these, I started to observe patterns and similarities how human societies interact with water. So, and besides that, I would also like to add that this thematic emerges from personal interest and experience, given that I have practiced water sports since a very young age. So I've always had a deep connection with aquatic environments. So my focus on this compound tries to be through the analysis of non-European societies, but also a part of from universalist religions. So although since modern science that study this compound like chemistry are embedded in the spirit of European knowledge and associated with the scientific revolution, it's important to know that there are different meanings of water. So from the scientific revolution onwards, there is clearly an opposition between water and H2O, being the latter a modern abstraction of water, which understands water not something natural, but something dominated and inert, a conquest from the modern human/man that feels that they can change nature at will. So the symbolic value seems lost, but modern societies are reminded often the symbolic role and duality of water when disaster happens, such as the tsunami in the Fukushima or with global water scarcity, which has led, among other aspects, for example, the ONU to insert water in their agenda for the last at least 3 decades. So my goal in my research is to look for a broader meaning of water that encompasses all meanings, and as such, I am at the moment exploring different meanings throughout time. Naturally, this leads to my PhD research main question: is water an universal human religious symbol? So the question itself, it's not new, and it has been explored in the early beginnings of the modern studies of religion during the 20th century. Yet, I believe it still lacks a truly interdisciplinary way of addressing the subject by using the hierarchical framework of the environmental humanities, whose new contributes will permit to analyze and review old and identify new aquatic symbols. Since I have a short amount of time and determined access to sources, I decided to focus on two societies that did not contact in space and time in the epoch before universal religions spread globally. So I have chosen the ancient Mayas and the lower Mesopotamian populations. The ancient Mayas and the lower Mesopotamian populations, the focus will be on early periods of both contests to assure there was no direct or indirect contact between them. Hence, for lower Mesopotamian, the scope will be between the 4th and the beginning of the 2nd millennium before Christ. And for the Maya context, it will be between the 3rd millennium before Christ and the late 1st millennium after Christ. So these human societies are also interesting and an interesting case to explore how European perceptions with the early archaeological expeditions did misinterpret and misunderstood non-European societies. In fact, at some point, both contexts have been understood as having faced a collapse due to environmental change because they couldn't adapt or due to overexploitation of their environment. But recent studies have painted a new view, contributing not only with new information derived from technological development, but also with new theoretical and methodological views. So my research and in this PhD is focused across multiple times and space, even surpasses human time in the sense that water has a longer history than the human species. Moreover, it is imperative to understand the changes occurred in this long time to better grasp the process between human groups and water. In sum, I'm looking for the connections that led to the creation, change, or disappearance of aquatic symbols. To give you a brief example of the kind of analysis I'm undertaking, let me focus on the ancient Lower Mesopotamian, where there is a female deity, Nanshe, related with the oceans, birds, and fish, but also the marshes. This deity appears in the early 3rd millennium BC, before Christ. Sources deeply connected to the city of Nigi, but her origins could be much earlier in time and space. It is possible that she was venerated in Eridu, another archaeological site or city, whose origins are dated to the 5th millennium before Christ. Archaeological data for this period shows a clearly ritual offerings related to water. These two city-states are 200 kilometers apart. So how one can explain the shift of the goddess from Eridu to Ningui? One of the explanations can reside in the climate change that affected her divine role functions. With the receding waters of the Arabian Persian Gulf, Nanshe might have traveled to Ningui, where she assumed a role more connected with the Martian environments. So to balance the lack of written sources available from the Maya context compared to the lower Mesopotamian, and after feedback from supervisors, other senior researchers, and colleagues, I have changed my approach to sources. Instead of focusing on textual documents as the main corpus, I will focus on iconographic representations and objects produced mainly on aquatic environments, such as shells, bones, and other elements from aquatic animals, which can add the analysis, namely by the relation between the symbology of the representation and the material used. For example, for the Maya context, shark tooths are found in words in tropical forests, which adds for information on long trade, but lacks still analysis on the possible symbolic meaning. As for the lower Mesopotamian context, there are cylinder seals made of shells with representation of both fishes and terrestrial animals, interestingly dated to the period of a transition from economy based on aquatic resources to one based mainly on terrestrial products. Another early consideration that we had and it changed was related to analysis of words of both contexts, because both contexts produce logograms since very early in time. So I'm thus interested in their several meanings and connection with aspects of the aquatic domain. For example, the lower Mesopotamian logogram used for water can also mean semen or even progeny. As for the Mayas, the logogram of water is also associated with the water lily, more specifically the species Nymphia ampla. This is quite interesting, given that this species can only survive in clear water, which also means it's potable for humans. Hence, by choosing this plant as the logogram for water, a symbolic meaning and a particular view on nature was beneath it. To conclude, this PhD is an ambitious project that is supported in the strong theoretical and methodological framework to environmental humanity. By crossing them with the studies of religion and then applying this intertwined approach to ancient context will allow us to conduct novel research about old questions such as, is water a universal symbol? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jaime. Very nice. Well, I guess we achieve a good coverage from land to we have sand, eucalyptus, tuna, whales, and water to close. I think it was really nice. Thank you so much for having accepted this invitation. I would invite the audience to put their cameras on and participate in the discussion if you wish. And now we have some time to make some informal, sympathetic discussion about your work, about the challenges that you are facing. You all work very different things, or not that different, but one aspect that is common, I guess, to all of you is that you have more or less all a large chronological frame, and maybe we can start discussing that, how you deal with that frame, because I was seeing your slides and I was wondering, when we have a question, a specific question that ranges such, I don't know, 3-4 centuries in some cases, how you cope with that, and how are you managing the information and the differences that you may find, or if not, the similarities along that time frame. I don't know if any of you would like to comment on the chronology. Let me also check here if no questions more. So if you want to connect that with my initial question about the challenges, what have been the major challenges that you are facing? I also noticed that you are in different stages of the PhD, so if you want to also comment on that, in which stage are you now? You can just open the mics and raise your hands and I will let you know. Yeah, go ahead, Jaime.
In regards, first of all, I'm in my second year of the PhD process. So it's still early on research, but for ancient societies and analysis of symbols, namely religious ones, we study always in the perspective of long chronologies too, because it takes a long time to symbols change or observe changes in mentalities. So, and also the kind of sources we have available to us can be from a different period, but relates to ancient periods because of oral tradition. So for me, the chronology being larger, it's not strange, and namely because I try to connect a lot with the environment to understand process like climate change and everything. We need to always go back to understand how that environment, that human societies are interacting. So my chronology is always changing a bit, but as a strong support on in the material or that environment that human societies are connecting.
Mhm. Rebecca, do you want to try
Yes,
here? You
well,
also have 3 centuries for research, more or
yeah.
less.
Well, in my case, I'm in my third year of research of my PhD, and about my chronology, yeah, it's a little bit extensive, but the difficult I faced, I think, is have sources from chronologies beyond my chronology that I have to see and incorporate and compare my chronology to the chronology beyond. So yeah, I think it's the main difficult on the chronology.
But what do you mean by beyond? You know,
Yeah, from the 15th century, for example,
mhm.
because I intend to end in the 13th century, but we always
Oh,
have to
okay,
compare
I'm
with
getting.
beyond.
Yes, so you are saying that the challenge is to stop in the
Yeah.
frontier that yeah, that's a challenge. Yeah. And Isabel, do you want to share
I'm in the
some
last
tips on
year
that?
of,
Because you
yes,
also have a large time frame.
at 3
Yeah.
centuries. I'm in the last year of fourth. It's the fourth and last year of my PhD. And one of the goals of my PhD is precisely the comparative perspective. So that's what I presented today. And currently I'm writing the PhD thesis. And one of the difficulties is also the interdisciplinarity with the geomorphology, the geology, archaeology in for example, for the Middle Ages and when the parishes disappeared during the Roman Empire. Sometimes I try to call to archaeologists to explain to me how it's an archaeology work done and how can we read the soil and try to compare the sediments, the data from geomorphology and the historical sources. I have 3 centuries, but almost 250 years are very regular because my analysis is from the perspective of local institutions, and in the Portuguese case they almost are regular from the end. In the case of the northwest of Portugal, they are very the production of the sources and the management is very regular between the end of the 16th century and to the institution of constitutional monarchy. The last, I guess, 40 years are more it's not difficult, but there are more in terms of legislative and alterations in the management in the case of central government and the local government. But the almost of the chronology is very regular. I only have to observe differences in the case of legislative from central government. And I also analyze not the local but the national in terms of the royal chancelleries. They are also very similar until the 1820s, when it's the institution of the constitutional monarchy.
Yeah, I understand that. Also about this disciplinarity, I was hearing you and also thinking about Brígida work and that connection between different disciplines. And how do you do that? So do you work in Brígida? I know, but I will ask anyway. Do you work in teams that can give you some support? Do you have in yourself that disciplinarity due to a career path with different disciplines? Do you ask for some help to colleagues? How do you manage to do this, to work and trying to answer your goals and your questions between all of these disciplines, different disciplines?
The big challenge is because it's my first time to work the point of view of environmental history. I'm an archaeologist, underwater archaeologist. Is the point of view of historical, environmental historical is a new thing for me. And the support of Christina, you, and the team is important because the multidisciplinary work is important to the new vision of the new vision of this type of fishery, because I work tuna I think 10 years in the view of archaeological and anthropological part, and the team, and is important to put a new vision in this work. And now I read royal documentation and I try to extract the numbers of animals, but I don't
it's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult.
It's difficult. Yeah.
In your case, it's the other way around. So you are an archaeologist that is now doing history, and in other cases, the colleagues are historians that need to go to archaeology. That's also a nice perspective, because your mindset must be completely different, and you need to adapt. Yeah, Katerina, go ahead. Thank you.
Hey, good morning. First of all, congratulations to all your presentations and work. I really enjoyed it. And keep going on the same thoughts. I just want to ask you, as a new field, beside your backgrounds in history or archaeology, it's to ask you how you have dealt with the concepts and the theoretical backgrounds of environmental history. If you have more difficult to get on that subject because it's a new discipline, or if you take account on that principles, or if they just came naturally in your work. It's just to know how you deal with the need to be well sustained on the theoretical and more conceptual aspects related with the environmental history. In the question, it was easy for you. You have access to new bibliography. You are well supported on that subject, or you have difficulties. It's just to know.
I can ask.
Yeah.
In my case, dealing with geology, archaeology, climate, I have to search for different bibliography. For example, I don't know much about the geology, but I search in the faculty in the disciplines of geography about marine geomorphology, and I read the bibliography but in the case of some bibliography more recent, it's not very easy to find. Sometimes I don't know if I can say it, but I use pirate search not in the internet, not in the most correct way, but I have to try to read different areas, because it will reach my work will come rich.
Yeah, that is something that I think that is also our duty, to start talking with our research units and our universities, stating that the bibliography existent is often very short for our needs. So that is something that you as PhD students, and we all as researcher must do, because we also face that in Lisbon, and we are building our own libraries, and also the faculty libraries with new books and papers, because it's very often very limited for our research area.
Yes, and sometimes Professor Inês Amorim also share with me some bibliography, but sometimes it's difficult for the university libraries before the time they buy and we have access.
Of course.
It's a long time sometimes.
Yeah, a PhD time. Yeah. Does any of you want to go on this question? If you want, just talk. If not, Rafael Soares, also a colleague from Portugal, are stating that you should keep your enthusiasm about environmental history, and he is questioning about how can our work contribute more to better public environmental policies. That is a challenge and a good question. We in Nova University have been talking a lot about the impact of our research, and these policy questions that our topics touch are very important. So in which way do you believe, and this also connects with the challenge for today, that was for you to think about the contributions of your research, so what are you, in what way are you improving knowledge, and specifically about this contribution for public environmental policies? What do you think on that?
I can go.
Yes, go ahead.
In my work, I think it's sometimes more tricky, but because I study ancient societies or older in time, but like environmental humanities and others, other fields are pressing more and more. It's other types of knowledge besides the traditional one or only the scientific ones. So I think understanding water, besides being the chemical point of view, because water has a big connection, it's a big symbolic connection in all societies. It's important to discuss that. I think also when environmental policies are being made or decided, because a river can have more than just being a resource or being more than just to build a dam, right? So alerting for that or creating a more meaningful meaning of water, you can introduce other voices besides just than the traditional views. But I think environmental history as a big point is developing maybe more policy papers. That's something in Nova and in our research group we start talking more and more doing about, because it's one way of doing it and alerting for our type of work we do, and because how humanities can contribute besides the more scientific or natural science can help or not. So I think that's my point of view mostly.
Yeah. I was also thinking about an Isabel work, those place obstacles that were used to resist and to stop drift sands. I wonder if they are used nowadays, and how can those solutions in the past can somehow help us to face some challenges in the present.
And asking also the question of Rafael, I guess my work could help to promote better planning projects for the coast, because nowadays in the northwest coast of Portugal, part of the area near the beaches are completely deforested, and I guess the local power do not know the importance of, for example, the trees to the erosion problems, and that areas near the beaches could not be occupied, but they are completely and densely inhabited. Now it's currently occupied, but until 10 years ago they were only used during the summer, and that area should maintain free of occupation, human occupation. The forest is needed, and now it's also used that wooden fences that are along the coast, but they are not capable of to prevent the erosion. The erosion it's increasing, sometimes 6 meters a year. It's taken by the sea. But the wooden fences are necessary because I'm reading hydraulic engineering to understand how the difference between these simple tools and how they can be successful, and even the engineering, the hydraulic engineer is not always capable of preventing the siltation of rivers, the erosion, and even the hydraulic engineers refer that, okay, we can use the large projects, but it's always and should always be used the simple tools that the local people know to sustain the dunes, the beaches, to maintain the rivers and prevent the siltation. and also educate local people from prevent and conserve the local flora, for example. Part of my work, I understand what people local do because I guess 15 years ago, I participated in a local project about the reforestation of the coasts and the invasive plants, also going to the Paulo's work, what is now considered an invasive plant, and the reforestation with more local plants and endogenous plants.
I was also thinking about in your case and Brígida case that you have a local range. Your work as a local range. How you manage to provide information for people nowadays, historical information from your work to the people nowadays. But you can bear that question in mind, and I will go for Sara, and then you can just answer together. Sara?
Yes. So I just want to say, first of all, congratulations to you all. I think you are doing such excellent and exciting work. Yes, I was always thinking about that kind of contribution that all of your work can bring us to the present. And I was thinking when I was hearing you, for example, and Isabel, you talk about a lot about resilience and vulnerability, and it is very interesting to try to measure if the answer. So, who the ones who's trying to cope? It's the community or it's the central power. And as you compare with other European regions, do you have the idea that it's the communities that have to answer because they are the ones who are depending on a daily basis with these conditions? They are the ones who are struggling. So maybe they are not expecting for the central power to answer. They have to do it because they really need it to. And what about the other European regions? What can you say about that? So also about Rebecca, one thing I have to say is that I always get surprised about data source that you have to analyze, because sometimes you are so traditionally used to the written document, and yeah, cheers to you, because you have to use a lot of other sources. I was thinking about who are the consumers. You talk about routes, about trade, and do you know what you can tell about who is consuming, who are the buyers, because it is a very and also what is the value of this product. Also to Jaime, what is the value of the water? This symbol, what is, because we can be consumers as we buy and we consume, but it also be like consumers of this as spiritual or religion. So don't forget the market aspects in your work. I think it is very interesting, because even nowadays we have to consider consumers and the markets. That's the one we are fighting for. And Brígida, I know you have these regional insights, but also you focus on the Algarve, but mainly concerning tuna and fishing communities. We also have to have a broader context, because not only the fish are moving, but also people are moving. And consider also what is happening in the south of Spain, because also in the north of Africa and Morocco, because also these communities, sometimes they are not only the local communities, but also fishermen that are also coming and doing this kind of activities. Also maybe to think about what can other species are being entered in this market. So maybe because you used 16th century, 17th and 18th, and for example, if we think about the beginning of the 16th century, it's totally different from the people who are consuming in the 18th century. So yes, trying to see what common can be, what I can find in common in your works, but was great presentations, and yes, cheers. These you don't have to all answer. These are some that what I was thinking while hearing you. So feel free to answer or not, or just yeah.
One of the preconcepts that I had before my PhD is that I will not find any support from the local power to the local communities, but I was wrong. In the Royal Gallery, I have my database. There are lots of support from the local power to collect taxes, and there are very regulations about it, but they support and help since the end of the 16th century. They promote that, and but in the 8th and it's very they specify a lot from Caminha to the Matosinhos also. There are lots of information for Matosinhos. It's not my area of analysis, but during the 17th century there are a lot information for Matosinhos. And in the 18th century, the Queen, Dona Maria I, specify lots of rules about deforestation, how many meters the trees should have before being cut. The people that could not, the journeymen that could not work on the afforestation, but local communities do not follow that rule. But there are lots of information in the central archives that prove that the central power also support that local action. In the case of other European cases, it is also the same. The institutions also help and promote that, and people in an individual, but in a cooperation, follow that and apply that strategies.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can just say one thing. Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't know if we're talking about the value in the sense of market economy, but in terms of symbolic, like both societies in this case, or when I started go a bit back before, when I started developing this PhD project, my goal was finding different types of water states. So I wanted to analyze societies that didn't have societies in the desert, for example, or societies in islands, because they will deal with water in different manners. But seeing the Mayas and Mesopotamian is really interesting to think about the symbolic value. So the Mayas, their biogeographic region is one of the more diverse in terms of environment and difficult environments to live in. And with lack of water, they still sometimes didn't use water. So which is really interesting. So when there are more water crises related with drought, there were pilgrimage to not show underwater rivers, but they didn't consume the water, was for asking some, or they wanted to develop their symbolic power or the importance of that city by creating pools of water that were just not used. They had just symbolic meaning. So water is really valuable, but sometimes there is a waste also in the society that needs so much water, right? So that's really interesting to think about the symbolic value. Also for the Mesopotamian, we think about that also, especially a society, again, with a lot of scarcity of water, but they use water in their fertile cycle. So the flood myth is developed in a way of renovating the water or the environmental scarcity of that time. So it's really interesting always to think about the symbolic value, and that's my goal.
Well, in my case, it depends of the product. In the ivory specific, it was consumed by the nobility or the church, and the ivory was traded as gifts from kings to kings, or from kings to the church. But in the case of the other products, like the meat of the whale, it was consumed with the normal people too, as well as the bones that was used as the construction of houses, as we can see in a Toquilla da Baleia. And the fat of the whale, it was used as illumination, so it circulate as in the people too. We can make a value on these products, of course, but for the ivory specific, there's not much documentation that we can see the value. It's more like one king give this ivory, wishes a cross to one princess, has a gift from his marriage, something like that.
Yeah, you cannot measure, but that kind of reference are very important to your case.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, to understand, to give the value, yes, the
Mhm.
meaning to different products. Yes, yes. You can work with tendencies and at least understand why. Yeah.
Well, I've been working for 10 years on a regional project interviewing tuna fishermen in Tavira. My father even lived in Marrocos because my grandfather was a tuna fisherman, and my mother lived in Barril Beach because my family were tuna fishermen. And myself, I'm part of this history, but now I need to focus of my thesis. But I hope expand this study to another tuna communities in Atlantic oceans and maybe the Mediterranean Sea. But I need to finish my PhD. And I think between 60 to 18th century have a lot of changes: the market, the people, the communities, the king, everything changed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very well. Thank you to all of you. Does anyone have a final question? If not, I would just thank you once again, saying that we, Reporta, we colleagues, we society are available for whatever you need. Keep creative, keep curious, and it will be fine. It was a pleasure to have you all here. Sara, thank you so much for your presence and contribution. And for the attendances, thank you so much. And on the Society webpage, you have the calendar for the rest of the year, once a month. So keep tuned, and thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.